First of all, I want to get away from the dictionary definition of a constitution. A constitution must have purpose, and the purpose must be to create a nation that conduces to the greatest happiness of the greatest number of people. That is what a constitution must be. And having set the objective of the constitution, you then frame a constitution to achieve that objective.
Because we really do have a race problem. Those divisions are real. We see it in our politics, we see it in our trade union. We see that they take the divisions with them. Look at where people live in this US. You have enclaves in the Bronx and in Richmond Hill and in Brooklyn. They're taking the division with them.
Women are dying in the streets, and we have a government pontificating running around campaigning for women's vote. No women should vote in this election coming up unless there is something done to the legislation as Magistrate Kim is advocating.
That voices like ours that are not in the political trench fighting it out, voices like ours should become stronger. One of the things about the Caribbean is that we have never had one discourse. Bass will know the days of the New World and the Old World and the radical left and so on. What we had was this concourse of ideas, which I think in the early days of independence pushed us in a certain direction. We've got to move back to that point of having these multiple discourses.
Suicide is a social epidemic that affects us all, but it's especially troubling in Guyana. At one point, Guyana was given the title the suicide capital of the world. Now, this is not a notoriety that any country would want, and it sparked ways in which conversations about how we can reduce this problem. This morning, I am joined by two guests, Dr. Indira Hari and Mr. Suresh Sugrim from the Humanitarian Mission of Guyana. And we're going to be discussing the issue of suicide. Now, it is important to note that there was a reduction of suicide. I wouldn't say it was a major reduction, but it still shows that we are making some strides in reducing this problem. When compared to 2017 and 2018, there was a reduction in the rate of suicide-related deaths. And so far in 2019, more than 20 persons have taken their lives in Guyana. Thank you for joining us, to my guest, and we're just going to go right into the issue. Now, Dr. Hari is the professional here who has professional knowledge from all angles on this issue. And we would just like for her to give us context of suicide in Guyana.
Okay, good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining in. I would like to start by saying something that I think should resonate with everybody. When we think about suicide, we think about something very devastating. It is. And then we automatically think, well, I would never, and I could never, and this won't happen to me. But suicide is something we have to approach with the mindset that it knows no race, it knows no gender, it knows no class. It is exempt from, it doesn't matter. You can belong to any religion, to anything at all, organizations or work. It doesn't matter, because at the end of the day, we're human beings first. So we should try not to judge anybody for having these thoughts or these feelings, or if the idea even crosses our mind. It's something that we struggle with on a daily basis. Many people have the thought but may never want to do it. Many people find themselves in situations where, things are exceedingly overwhelming, and then but the thought just doesn't come up one day and we decide, I'm going to end my life. There is so much more that's happening before that we need to look into. And I think especially here in Guyana, we struggle with it very often. There's so many risk factors and so many triggers, and the people face them every day. So that would be, one of the things why it's also so prevalent here.
And I have Mr. Sugrim. He is on the ground and is dealing and has dealt with families who have lost loved ones to suicide. What are your thoughts on suicide in Guyana generally, based on your experience on the ground firsthand?
A pleasant good morning to Dr. Harry. Good morning to you, Tracy. Good morning to all our viewers. Thank you for having me on this panel here. And I just want to say that I am not the professional Dr. Harry is, with all my due respect. I have more experience working on ground in Guyana. And one of the challenging beats amongst our young people is rejection, denials, alcohol, sex. And we can go on to talk of all the many social ills that these children got involved with. And sometime or another, when the world started to cave in, there's nobody there to take hold of them. And one of the major problems, based on my observation with suicide in Berbice and other areas, is parents and parenting have a lot to do. Parents need to start to adjust their sail, make rooms for accommodation for the younger children and the younger mind. We can't expect our children to live in our time and to walk in our shoe, different age. Example, if an Indian girl come home and says, "Mommy, I'm in love with an Afro-Guyanese boy," is a taboo thing. And Mommy will say, "Take a dose of Gramazone," and the child said, "Give me the Gramazone." And she drank it.
And this is, you're talking about your experience with the cases that you've dealt with. Those were some of the causes.
Of course it is. And many of our younger cases in Berbice, teenagers, 15, 16, 17, 18, and sometimes we can go a bit older. The older cases are different, but the majority of the younger cases is true relationship, boyfriend, girlfriend, rejection, denials, parents do not accept boy or do not accept the girl, or different race, as doctor have clearly said. It's not about a mindset, it's not about a gender, it's not about a class, it's not about a religion. And as much we talk about suicide in Guyana, we have it in North America. So it's an epidemic that's being worldwide.
And of course, we're talking about suicide in Guyana, and Guyana being labeled at one point the suicide capital of the world. Now, do you think that one set of the population is more affected by the issue of suicide than the other?
Well, based on my observation in Guyana, and I want to be upfront and I want to be honest with you, each and every one of us have a different finding, is that it's more dominant with the East Indian Hindus. And if you look at the Muslims and you look at the Christians and you look at the Afro-Guyanese, what are the percentage of suicide that have been committed in Berbice and elsewhere? I work in Berbice and I know the water in Berbice. And again, as I said in your opening remarks, I went to many of the funerals. I've spoken to many of the family. I have witnessed many suicides right up in Port Morant and other areas. One of it that where a young girl, I think was 17, 18 years old, 8 months pregnant, hanged herself. The baby was in her tummy. I went to many diplomatic meetings at Arthur Chung Center with many diplomatic corps and government and ministries officials, and the majority of the people is other denomination. We hardly see any pandits was there, maybe 1 or 2 from the East Indian diaspora in Guyana, so we got to be real about it.
So there was a study done, right? A research done, and they had gone across through all the reported suicides in the country. So they did comparisons between attempted and actual suicides, and for example, race, religion, gender, age groups, etc., and types or the method used as well. So while Hindus, yes, were very prevalent, there were also the Pentecostals up there with them. And we found that, for example, in terms of actual suicide itself, because when we use the term suicide, we mean, we managed to commit the act, as opposed to attempted suicide, which is I tried to end my life but did not succeed. So in terms of attempted suicide, we had a lot more males and a lot more African males as opposed to East Indian. And when it comes to committed suicide, most times you would have the East Indian population there.
That's interesting to know, and this is based on actual research that was done. So why do you think that so many people are feeling hopeless in Guyana? Because and hopelessness is one of the contributing factors, and it can be so many leaves from that branch. Why do you think so many people are feeling hopeless?
Well, I think we need to start a little bit more than just feeling hopeless, because we don't just wake up and decide we're going to end our lives. We have so much that has been building up, so many contributing factors, and we have quite a few of the risk factors present here. Like Mr. Sugrim was saying correctly, relationship issues, race issues. Now, in these present days, we have a lot more of our gender identity issues. You have financial issues. We have kids who went to school and they've done 20-something subjects and they still can't get a job. And this is not stemming just from today. This is coming from generations up. And, you know, just acceptance of where I am in life, if I'm not progressing enough. He mentioned parents and the way that they deal with children. We have those peer pressures. We have those pressures from parents to succeed, to do well, to excel at life. And if, you know, children are anything below an expected standard, then they're seen as a failure. You know, then there's the difficulty to provide for a family and to see a proper future ahead of you. So when these struggles are there on a very daily basis, people can develop depression at some point in time. And, you know, and then there's, especially associated with the East Indian culture, unfortunately, the turn to alcohol to solve my problems. But then alcohol is a depressant type of drug in itself, and they can develop all these symptoms and then get to that point. But we also have milder things in terms, you know, that people would say, oh, it's not mental health related, but chronic illnesses where people don't want to live in pain, or they don't see themselves recovering from an illness, or the family history of mental health that comes down in every generation. So there are also those types of factors associated that can lead to a person becoming depressed to the point that they see taking their lives as a better option, or sometimes as the only solution. And so that's how we can end up getting there. Teenagers have the world of issues to face. Then we have the elderly, because people are surprised if an old person decides to do it, or if an extremely young person does it. But those age groups are not exempt from suicide. You have the elderly who we don't have time with them, we don't want to talk to them, we don't have time to go visit, we shun them, they're rejected. They've already lost a sense of purpose in life because, you know, okay, I'm no longer working, I'm no longer taking care of my family. Or the cases where those persons still have to try and find a job to look after their existing family. And if their children don't provide for them financially, if they're struggling, they feel lonely, and all of those things can lead to developing multiple signs for you to have depression. And we don't usually see these because we're not looking for it. And then we're surprised when the person takes their life.
That's a really important note, because a lot of the times we're surprised. You just said it. But can we touch on some of the signs? Now, I know you would have mentioned it, so I'd like for us to touch on that. We can start with you, Dr. Harry, and then Mr. Sugrim. Some of the signs of, you know, that a person is suicidal or may want to harm themselves.
Before Dr. Hari comes on, I would like to endorse her statement. And it is nothing but real facts, straight talk, right up to the point, is what it is.
Yes, Dr. Harry, what are some of the signs? What do we look out for? Because I know they had a case, or two rather, in Berbice, where a 10-year-old and then it was a 12-year-old, they took their lives, and the families were devastated. They said they saw absolutely no sign. They can't comprehend what would have made this child take his life.
Okay, so we can separate it into different age groups in life. So for example, if you want to know that a child is depressed, you can look for their patterns in play. They may not want to play like normal other children do. They might be more reserved into themselves. They may have changes in their appetite or sleeping pattern. If you were trying to congratulate them on a job well done at school or out in any other area, they're not going to be accepting of these compliments. They would just brush it off. You might find that they do not participate in games or extracurriculars, or even, play with other family members their age. They might be very quiet. They will look down. They might look like, some people try to describe it, they look like they pull down. It tends to show on them. So those are things that you can look for. They may not be interested in buying a new toy or be excited if a family member gives them something where, normally maybe they would. The elderly, they tend to stockpile medication. So they may have frequent visits to doctors, but they're not taking the medication, and they stockpile it so that they can take all at one time. Or they constantly mention feeling lonely. They start giving away some possessions, especially prized possessions. And normally people would look at this and say, oh my gosh, I got this. But not stopping to think, hold on, this is something that you never wanted to give away before. Why now? Generally, there's also an interest in the topic of death or suddenly talking about dying. Not necessarily saying, oh, I plan to kill myself, but, just an interest in the topic, or acquiring lethal means. It can either be by getting a gun or instruments like knives, etc. So those are some of the things that we can look at. And then others that would fall maybe across the board is, wanting to be by themselves, wanting to be isolated. They don't want to be around people too much, even if before they used to. There is a difficulty in concentrating and focusing. They may be forgetful in things. So for the children, for example, you could look at a decline in their grades, a lack of interest in school, not doing so well anymore. There is that irritability, getting angry quickly. You also have, across the board, changes in sleeping and eating, which can be overeating or oversleeping, or not eating at all and not sleeping at all. It can go either way. You also have persons who lose interest in things that they used to enjoy before. So if you see a child enjoyed, let's say, swimming classes, and now they don't anymore, why not? At least look into that. Even for adults, if it was a television show that they particularly enjoyed and now I'm not interested, I don't want to look at it anymore. You may find that they're sad for very long periods of time, and it's difficult to come out of that sadness. Sometimes it's difficult for them to derive enjoyment or pleasure from anything. So you can find that, okay, I am trying to enjoy this activity, but it's either not working at all, or I am trying, but that sadness is lingering at the back, or I do for a little bit, I manage to enjoy, but then this sadness creeps up back on me again. Then there is the feeling of hopelessness, of helplessness, of issues with self-esteem and confidence. And they tend to feel like this is where I'm going to be stuck all of the time. And that's also the feelings that patients tend to develop when they're ill for long periods. And this is not just mental illness, including medical illnesses or something physical. And then they tend to get very down and very sad because their lives are changing. I do not know how to cope with this degree of illness. And then, of course, you have the passing thoughts of, maybe my life would be better if I wasn't here. Maybe I would be better off dead so I don't have to face these problems. I don't seem to be able to find a solution or a way, so maybe death is the best answer. Now, and then, of course, from the thought, it can manifest into an attempt. So you can have simply starting with self-harm, cutting, sometimes cigarette burns. And cutting isn't just on the forearm. Sometimes they do it on the tummy, sometimes they do it on their legs, sometimes in places where they can hide. Sometimes people would take cigarettes and burn themselves. And when they do these self-harm methods, it's not necessarily to end their lives, but more
This
as
is a cry
means
for
of,
help.
as a means of venting my frustration and my feelings, and that nobody understands. And a lot of times too, they feel that they cannot tell people these things. And here's a very common one. They tend to feel like energyless, like they can just be in bed all day. They have no motivation to get things done. And then a lot of times I have parents coming in and telling me, oh, they're lazy. They don't want to do anything. They don't want to get up. And I have to be like, hold on. When we evaluate this as a whole, it's not that the person is lazy. Sometimes as well, when they're in that moment, they don't have the motivation or the energy to get things done. The thought might cross their mind, yes, I would like to do this. But then the rest of them is not cooperating, and that creates a cycle of frustration, which can in turn make their sadness worse, make the feelings of hopelessness and helplessness worse. And we spiral and just keep going worse and worse as time goes by. So if you look at any of these things individually, it doesn't seem like anything for alarm. Nobody will look at a person who had a few nights of difficult sleep and say, oh yeah, nothing's wrong. Individually, these things don't seem alarming. But it's when they start to come together and we don't see them together because we're not looking for them, and the person is suffering through this. And then it's all that pain and suffering that sometimes makes them think, I just cannot anymore. And, you know, apart from those signs, persons who may be under the influence of alcohol or drugs, or who may have any other type of illness that causes them to be delirious in a moment or impulsive, they may not have had the thought of, I am going to go do this, but under the influence of everything else, plus having these signs and symptoms pre-existing, it is so much easier for them to attempt or actually commit.
It's so interesting, everything that you've noted, and I'm sure, you know, for persons who are listening who would have lost someone to suicide, it's, you know, now clicking that these are some of the signs that we did not notice or we weren't paying attention to. So I hope for persons who are listening, you know, we are going to start paying attention to the people we love, people who are near us, their actions, and we can recognize when they're changing in these types of symptoms. Now, Dr. Sugram, Mr. Sugram, for you, based again, because you too have dealt with suicide, you suffered as a result of it. What are some of the signs that you've noticed apart from what Dr. Harry has highlighted for persons who would have taken their lives?
We are in the essence of time, and I would like to echo the sentiments of everything that Dr. Harry have shared with us. There is only 2 or 3 things I would like to add to Dr. Harry sentiments, is that many of the younger children or many of the persons who want to or have a plan in committing suicide, there's nobody there to listen to them. One of the challenging things that I've observed in Berbice is confidentiality. That these children cannot talk to their parents' home. They cannot talk to the people in the church, the mosque, or the temple. They cannot talk to the teachers, because by the time they get home, somebody else already knows their business. And that is one of the major factors that I have personally realized, that a child may went and say something to a teacher says something to somebody, and somebody says something to somebody, and by the time you left Fort Maranta, Rose, all that stuff is already done on the other side of Bravo Creek. Confidentiality is very, very important. And what I'm saying here right now, based with Dr. Harry, is that as long as somebody can find somebody to talk with, no matter how bad it is, you are not alone. But we need to take the time to listen. And one of the downfall, parents do not take the time to listen to their children. And a lot of stuff that had happened, these children embody that. And sometimes I always say, the doctor have mentioned about alcohol is a silent killer in a bottle. The majority of the suicide cases and the domestic violence and the murders and whatever we go through, everybody consume what is in the bottle, and then they started to act. So in America, we talk about suicide, alcohol is a silent killer in the bottle. So again, as I said, I quite agree with what doctor is saying, but there are many, many, many factors, and we can sit here, we can talk about it all, but it's what it is. Real talk, straight talk, reality.
And I want to touch, Dr. Harry, on mental health. That's a stigma in Guyana, a huge one. As soon as, a person suffers a breakdown, there's so much stigma attached to it. And so it's not something that we talk about. But, and you touched on it a little and how it's associated with suicide. Can you expound a little on mental health and its relation to suicide?
Yes. So mental health, people don't look at the word mental health to mean I am taking care of not only having a healthy mind, the health of my state of mind, but the rest of my body as a result of that. People will quickly go to the doctor for a headache or a cold, but they will not take the time to take care of my mental health. And stress falls under mental health. Sometimes we have such stressful days, we have such a hard time, maybe something's happening at work, and all I need to do is sit and talk to someone, like Mr. Sugrin keeps saying, talking is important. And we associate, especially in Guyana, mental health to mean you're mad, you trip out, oh, I'm not a class of people. No, you do not have that specific condition, but anxiety falls under mental health. Depression falls under mental health. There are so many of them. Having trouble with alcohol or other substances, that falls under mental health. And stress is one big factor that can lead to these points. And because we don't take these things seriously or we don't take them for anything, we quickly blame it on, oh, my head hurts every day because, I don't know, maybe I'm tired or I'm not sleeping well. But what more? Why is this happening? And then sometimes it ends up to the point where persons will come when it's far gone or when it's really serious or when someone has been hurt or something went completely wrong. That's when it raises a flag. Instead of me trying to think to myself, I need to take care of my mental health on a daily basis. Now, it's hard to avoid stress. You can't live life without having stress. Now, sometimes I tell people we have good stress and we have bad stress. People are like, what do you mean, good stress? Now, good stress is that kind of stress that challenges you to be better, to work better, to, gain a new experience or to learn a new tool to live by. But then we have bad stress that can lead us into being frustrated, being angry, being flustered. Okay, I had a hard day, so I need to go drink. Or I'm stressed, so I'm going to go smoke 4 or 5 cigarettes. Or I'm turning to marijuana, for example, because that's going to help me calm down. So even stress alone is a starting point for other mental health issues. Now, mental health issues, and I would like to say this, if it's okay. We have an entire bracket of illnesses in medicine that are called chronic and recurrent. Chronic meaning that long-term, recurrent meaning that you can have relapses along the line. Hypertension falls under there. Diabetes falls under there. But we don't judge people for going and getting their pressure checked. Instead, we ask them, why are you not checking it? We don't tell persons who are on the medication for that, why are you taking this medication? It's going to hurt you. We encourage them to take their medication. But somehow when it comes to mental health, oh, you're going to see a psychiatrist? You mad. Oh, you're going to talk to a social worker? Something's wrong. Oh, you're taking medication? Don't take that. It's going to make you sick. It's going to make you worse.
Yeah.
Why? So we really need to do a lot in terms of educating people and having them understand that if you do not take care of your mental health, you do not have physical health or any other health to follow. Mental health is very important. And if we take care of our mental health and get tools that we can use to face life on a daily basis, then maybe we can decrease our chances of becoming depressed. Maybe we can decrease our chances of developing a substance issue, and we can learn how to cope better so that we do not end up at the point of suicide. Because a lot of times we get there and the before thought is, I'm absolutely sure that suicide is what I need. But then if we survive, then it's like a regret, and then we have so many other issues that we need to deal with after. We need to do all we can to help persons not to get to that point, because it's a struggle for them. But we need persons to accept that mental health is not a bad thing. Taking care of your mental health is one of the most important things that you can do. And if I may, when you were also asking about the 2 children that had committed suicide, and maybe Mr. Sugrim can tell us a little bit more about this, especially in those areas and children and persons who have seen it in their families, they tend to say, I have seen this in my family, so this is also the route I'm going to take. And then we've had those cases with school children that it's been like, okay, one of those things where everybody's going to be doing it, so everyone's doing it. Oh, my friend did it, I'm sad about it, I'm going to cry, I'm going to do it. So it's the way that we approach these things. And I mean, if there was a way, I feel like we should have some sort of like a mental health part of the curriculum in all schools, because to talk about it today and then never come back or follow up will not make much of a difference.
Very good point. Yeah, that's...
Keep at very often, make it frequent, make it regular, make it your daily bread and butter.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point that you made, to make it a part of the curriculum, because I know too the Ministry of Health, they have a mobile unit where they counsel children who are suicidal. And for the children, I know on the quarantine, a young girl had committed suicide, and the ministry would take their bus to the school to counsel the children, because as you just pointed out, the kids are sad and they see it kind of becomes a trend, and it's something that they too want to do. So Mrs. Sugrim, can you touch on that? And also from a spiritual perspective, do you think it's not just a financial thing, an emotional thing, but it's also spiritual?
I don't think an hour is enough for this program, having Dr. Harry here with us right now. I was making some notes, and one thing I want to start with is stigma. There is a huge stigma when you come to suicide and mental health. And I would tend to agree with Doctor again. I beg to agree to disagree, but I agree with you here, that it becomes a taboo thing. And we need to get rid of that taboo thing. And the only thing for us to get rid of that taboo thing is education is the key to unlock that door. And with all the many social ills that we have been facing with in Guyana, it all falls under the umbrella of an educated mind. Parents, on the whole, need to start to get the children educated. I'm sorry.
And parents need to educate themselves too about this issue. That's very important.
We can sit here and we can talk, and all of us had many suicide walks and rallies, and we closed the region down at the national level. It was just about a moment. What happens after that? You mentioned the school bus goes to the school. After the school bus has gone back to Georgetown, what happened? To date, we do not have social workers. We do not have guidance counselors in public schools. With all the mud that has been happening across that nation, to date, we have nothing set up in place for these children into the school system. They're teachers, they're educators, they're social workers. They have to deal with the students. They have to deal with so much stuff, one person. And you would tend to agree with me, Tracy. There are so many teachers and so many people who have went through UG and got their social degree in Region 6. To date, do we have a social worker that is attached to school? I've been talking to some of these teachers. They want them to teach, and they give them $10,000 a month just to be a social worker. It doesn't work that way. It's some things that needs to address, and some things that needs to... I'm tired of the talk shop. I am truly tired of the talk shop. And
but the conversation is important. I totally understand what you're saying, that it's a lot of talking and we need to be more practical about it. But now, we keep talking with hopes that, we're going to get more done.
I'm going to say this very openly. I walk away from race, religion, and politics. My religion is humanity. And I'm going to say this across the spectrum. The government of Guyana, I'm not talking about the past and present, but I'm talking about government, haven't done enough for mental health. We invest money in all the various
I think everyone would agree.
Yeah, but we need to do something about it. And all of us agree, all of us talk about it, but what are the outcome out of it?
So, but
You
and
talk
that's what.
about wait a minute, Tracy. You talk about the reduction of suicide, yeah, but do you know the amount of suicides that still exist in the Barbados? I met you when in 2005 when you was a little girl at Little Rock. I met you Nafisa. I still maintain that relationship. The media house doesn't pick the suicide on a daily basis because it becomes a norm.
Yeah, that is true. That is true. And I want to touch on this now. Like both of you would have highlighted so many signs, and I'm sure there are signs that persons who are listening, they too didn't understand. Now, how do we help a person who is crying out for help once we recognize these signs? How do we help them?
One question, Tracy. Dr. Harry is in Georgetown. Her hands are filled dealing with Georgetown and surrounding areas, okay? How much of Dr. Harry do we have in Essequibo? How much of Dr. Harry do we have in Barbados? How many more Dr. Harry and Byro Harry do we have in the country right now? Dr. Midas is in Region 6. She is one person across that region with 136 schools. It is reality. I'm sorry.
Yeah, point taken.
Now, you were talking about that. You were talking about that little boy at Bushlat Village in the quarantine. I left America and I flew into Guyana. That boy was playing around. I visited the home. I visited where he committed suicide. I visited where he was sitting on a piece of wood when he tied a rope. And when that wood flipped, there was nobody there to help him.
Yeah, and again, I just want to make the point. Hence, the reason why we have programs like this, and we're thankful to Globespan for the platform where we talk about suicide, domestic violence. And it has been making a difference because persons have been reaching out to me, to Mr. Singh and his family, and to the team to say that, it's making an impact. And I'm sure a lot of lives are touched today and persons are more aware, and we're not even finished with the program. And so I want to go back to how do we help those who are crying out for help? Once we recognize these signs and, we start paying more attention.
So we do have to please reinforce what Mr. Sugram said. Confidentiality. That is key because persons are afraid due to the stigma attached, due to the negativity attached. Because sometimes you go to a religious leader and they'll tell you, oh, that's a sin, you cannot think about that, that should not be in your mind, get that out. And instead of approaching the subject from I am speaking to a human point of view, there is that instant talk of shutting it down instead of, okay, let's deal with why you're feeling like this in the first place so that we can see if that thought can be removed in the process.
Wow, yeah.
But, reaching out is key, it's important, but we make it difficult because of the way we approach the subject. We make it very difficult. But if a person can speak to a teacher, a community leader, somebody that they trust, we're not asking those persons to solve their issue, but being a lending ear sometime in a moment can be all it takes to stop a person from doing that. Maybe people sometimes come and they're like, okay, let me see if there's anyone who will listen to me. And maybe we shut them down in that moment and that's enough for them to say, well, okay, nobody cares, nobody's there, nobody listens. Then I really do need to go do this. Apart from that, I will give you like a bit more on the professional side. Yeah. We do have, for example, at GPHC, a few social workers and psychologists that are there for persons who wish to go and have somebody professional to talk to. The team at GPHC, meaning the psychiatrists that work there, they also go and do a few outreach clinics, which, if you don't mind, I will tell you now.
Yes, please.
They used to go to Parika Clinic at the Parika Health Center every third Friday of the month. The doctors from GPHC will go there to conduct the clinic. To Maikoni, every second Thursday of the month. The doctors go and they have an entire mental health clinic there. And more, every fourth Thursday of the month. To Lenora, every third Thursday of the month. Linden and Suddy have psychiatrists stationed there. So their clinics are every day, Mondays to Fridays, and I think on-call emergencies on the weekends as well. So Linden and Suddy have their doctors stationed there. Outreaches are also made to Lethem, Mabaruma, and Bartica, but those are more a little far apart, and most times whenever funds are available for the trip to be made, because it's quite a big one. And there's still also the suicide hotline existing. And I will call out the numbers, but if people go and they just Google suicide hotline Guyana, all the information is also there. So they can get through on numbers 223-0001, 223-0009. There are also numbers for GT&T and Digicel. GT&T being 623-4444. Digicel 600-7896. Now, the hotline also offers persons the option that if they do not have enough credit to call or make the phone call, if they're using a cell phone, that they can just send a message and then the hotline contacts them. Now, prisons also has a date for visits, because persons who have mental health issues sometimes also end up at prisons for some issue or the other. And those clinics are done every second Tuesday of the month. It's coordinated. We also have persons who are at the rehabilitation center at Monrepo, and they're in charge of bringing those persons down to the clinic for their visits and everything else. So we do have those, but like Mr. Sugram said, it's 4 or 5 people to do all of this. So that's another area that we really need to work on, expanding the number of mental health workers that we have.
Mr. Sugram, your thoughts? How do we help persons who are suffering?
All right. Very quickly, there was a lot of training in Region 6 by professionals and PAHO and many various organizations, local and international. Many individuals went to these training, but it's come back to what our honorable doctor had mentioned, fundings. And as she said, funding is the key factor here. And all of these persons who went through these workshops and went to Pegasus and had a certificate, and we went, we did training, and they go back to everybody put it on Facebook, I went through mental training. But what help are they giving to the community? And when you talk to them, oh, I'm not going to spend my money to go there, it's not my business. So we have to look at the network, and I'm asking, as we on Globespan International, we need to hold somebody accountable for the region, right? We need money to do these programs. Again, as I said, Dr. Harriet and her dad is just one person and 2 persons, and Dr. Midas in Borbis is just 1 person. So it comes back to funding, yeah? Things need to be implemented. In America here, if I dial 911 and say Storisha suicide, they'll be kicking my doors down. They'll be taking me away. There was a little girl the other day called 911. She was wanted to commit suicide. They locked her up. They took her away and put her into an institution. Where are we in Guyana with all of this? We are the highest, but yet we have nothing in place today.
Yes.
Why can we get a why can we get a vehicle for Region 6? Why one vehicle is traveling across the country? We have money for every other thing else, but mental health in the past and current situation, we still remain as a stigma. We are stagnant. Everybody talk. Everybody talk. Everybody do a workshop. Everybody do a lecture. But 3 o'clock in the morning, Tracy want to come in. Oh, I'm not leaving my home. I am not going out on the road to take hold Tracy's hand. Who is going to help who?
And I want to, because you touched a little about the suicide hotline, who are we speaking to when we call the suicide hotline? And you said if, the person doesn't have enough credit, they can text, and the suicide hotline, they will call them. So who are we talking to, and what support is really offered?
Okay, so what happens is that there were multiple ongoing training sessions for the police force who handle the hotline. And they give that first impact, try to, have the situation under control. And what they also do is if it's too much for them to handle, like they cannot do the entire situation, they call in the doctors. They would call in the social worker or the psychologist to then come and take over. If they can damage control for that person to get to the hospital on time, then that's also done. So they just take that first step to try to damage control, calm down. If I see that I'm not managing, then I'm calling in for the professionals to come in or for extra help to come in, and also to keep the person on the phone until, for example, maybe someone can get to them where they are.
Okay.
Again, Tracy, it's a good program, and this has been on the table for quite a long time. Yeah.
Yeah.
This is not the first one. I personally went through Arthur Chung Center with many workshops with diplomats and government officials. But to date, we are still behind time. And what I suggest we do as people from the diaspora and are in Guyana, we need to start to lobby. So somebody, we have to hold the politicians across the board accountable, because how long are we going to spend our money as diaspora to go back home to do whatever needs to be done? It's all come down to funding.
Yes, that is indeed true. And like the whole conversation is enough is not being done. So what more needs to be done? And we can't just look at the government or NGO or just the diaspora to get it done. We can all play a role to help with this situation. So what more can we do in your personal opinions?
Okay.
Well, again, before Dr. Hari comes on very quickly, it's all come back to fundings. It's all come back to money. Bottom line. Take it from there, Dr. Hari.
Thank you. Apart from that, it starts, yes, from the top, creating the space for us to be able to work and get things done. But if the people themselves do not change their mindset on mental health, we will go nowhere. Doing one walk one time a year will do nothing. That will not change what happens in mental health or suicide. Having a workshop and never having a follow-up will never do anything. If you have a workshop, yes, have it. But bring these persons back in, evaluate what they've been doing. How have they been making a difference? It's not, oh yes, I was given a chance to not work for 3 days, so I say I'm at a workshop and then I don't do anything with it after. Evaluate them. Give them a test. Let's see, how much have you learned? How much have you retained? How much are you actually doing out there? And we really need to implement this in schools, especially because you don't wake up an adult and decide I'm going to be depressed as an adult. There are issues that are stemming from childhood that may not have been resolved, that you drag with you all the way up. And as life hits you with, I don't have a job, I'm working, but the finances are not enough, I'm having relationship issues or home issues, or my child is difficult, I don't know how to handle this. Whatever stress you have in life adds up, and then we get to this point here. So we need to deal with things from ground zero and then work our way up. And it's not just educating the system of today or the children of today. If we don't have the adults of 2-3 generations ago change their mindset, then we also will have an issue where the persons of today are not heard. Because if you go tell a great grandmother or a grandmother, I think I want to kill myself, they will not understand where are you coming from with this. Yes, okay, you get 5-6 lash every day, but that's just a discipline. That's to bring you up. What are you complaining about? Like, we have to change mindset at every level possible. And then the other thing that happens is you have, like Mr. Sugrim said, you have persons who are trained, but then I don't want to deal with it after. I don't want to have to actually get my foot in and do the work that it takes, because dealing with persons in mental health is not an easy task. It's not, oh, I dealt with you and then this is over. You have to be there along the entire way. So personally for me, don't go get training in mental health if you're not ready to take it on. If you're not ready to do what you have to do, because then we have training happening, training this, training that, and that's what's being promoted. But then what about what's happening in the aftermath of that training? How many times have we not had trainings for persons at different workplaces or for schools, but then are these persons doing that in the school? Are they working as that in the school? And then back to confidentiality issues with them again.
Yeah. What I said, Dr. Hari, is that word, the key word is what we talk about, the mindset. And unless mindset and change, behavioral patterns will never change. And I don't care how good you are and how good I am and many others, if an individual is not ready for that change and to change his or her mindset, it is not going to happen. And you also talk about baggages. A lot of them walk with baggages. It's a taboo thing. Oh, if I left and I walked, what my family is going to say, what my neighbor is going to say, So the best thing out for them is to do whatever needs to be done. And I quite agree with you, and I don't know, I am talking to other stakeholders. With all that has been going on, What are we doing, and how can we change mindsets? That's the key factor.
Yeah, how can we change the mindset of the people? If we can touch on that. But you know what I want to talk about in schools, because we've seen, I would say, an alarming rate, because this is something that, you know, was not happening. A lot of school children are taking their lives, and we do not have counselors in school, fair enough, but we have the teachers. What advice would you give to them to deal with their students? Because the reality is we don't have social workers, so the teachers become the social workers, or in some cases they become the problem. So what advice would you give to teachers to deal with their students and to help children who are suffering, because teenagers are going through quite a bit?
Before Dr. Hari comes on, Tracy, with all my due respect to you, I think we need to hold the government accountable for putting social worker into schools.
Yes, of course.
There's no if and there's no but. A teacher is trained to teach. A teacher is not trained to be a mental health or to be a social worker. And Dr. Hari will tend to agree with me. And this has been on the table for the longest while. And today, we do not have one social worker in school.
Yeah. Well, for the time being, of course, someone needs to be held accountable for not having social workers in school. There's need for it, because it's not just suicide. It's so many other problems that teenagers are facing. Drug abuse, because that's a problem. Teenage pregnancy and all of that. But for the time being, like, you know, for the teachers to help them, to help the students. Dr. Hari, what are your thoughts on that?
Yes. So mental health is supposed to be a part of the teaching, like the teacher's curriculum at UG. There's supposed to be a mental health part for them to have understanding. Now, having the teachers having to do the job of a social worker or do the damage control is tricky, because if you're not properly trained, then you can make the situation worse rather than better. So the proper training is important. And okay, if it is that we are going to have a difficulty in for now, for example, having a social worker per level at school, or 2 to 3 per school, then let's work on the teachers themselves. All right, if what we have are more teachers than persons who are going to be social workers, let's focus more on proper training and continuous training for the teachers, for them to, at one point in time or another, if it's an emergency, okay, I can damage control this situation. If that's what has to be done in the meantime, or while working on a better program, to have minimum 2 to 3 social workers per school. We have the psychology program that's kicking off at UG. Maybe they can do a system where each school should have a psychologist. You know, things like that, put those things into system. And then we also, and I will stress on this as much as possible, create the space where the students are comfortable enough to go and talk to these persons. Because then we will do nothing by training 1,000 people and sending them out there, and then not creating the space where the students can go talk to these persons, and the system still will not function. So again, changing your views on persons who are suffering with any issue of mental health at all. Even if a person is simply stressed and they may have just a few signs, but not yet a mental health condition. Don't wait until you have a mental health condition. Start when you start seeing a few signs. Okay, this is not normal. This is not me. I shouldn't feel like this. Let me go talk to somebody.
Yeah.
And we have to create that space for them to be able to do that freely, without them saying, I'm not going to that public place because all the mad people are there. No, that's not right. You saying that is not helping to change the system. Persons who have that mindset is not helping. Fair enough. I completely understand that there are persons who may be afraid, or who may not want to be seen, or who think, you know what, I really would like this information to stay private. Now, for that, for example, we do have a clinic on Brick Dam, lot 74 Brick Dam. It's next to the masjid. Persons who don't wish to go to a public system, there's also a private system. There are also a few other people who work at private places. Now, so it exists. A few places do exist, but we really need to create the space for persons to feel free and to create an ongoing training. Okay, I've been trained at one level, let's test you. Let's keep testing you. How are you proceeding? Are you learning? Have you learned anything new? Are you falling back? Like, I think that's so very important. And starting at school levels and at every level, maybe religious places, when they hold their sessions, they can hold a session maybe one Sunday a month or something. Let's talk about issues, you know, how can we deal with this? Because we're not gonna separate and tell persons, oh, you're not allowed to be religious. No, your religion can help, but then we don't want persons who are from a particular religion telling people, the doctor is not gonna help you, the medication is not gonna help you, just go read a book. Just go say a few prayers and that will cure you. No, they can go hand in hand, but we also need to come forward, evolve, change. You know, times are different. We need to be different.
Very quickly, Tracy, Doctor was talking about space, and I want to reinforce this very quickly. I know we have approximately 5 minutes to wrap up. At one time in Port Moronto, the mission facility, with Dr. K and some Cuban doctors and Dr. Midas, we used to take a bus and go to the school and pick the children and bring them into the space, which was in Port Moronto. It was doing well. But somewhere along the line, the doctors was nipping a case where a child maybe was molested. Parents found out, and parents said, oh, I don't want my child to go back. And that program went under, okay? So what is happening here, and I strongly suggest, back in the days we were talking about the golden rule, and we need to bring back that golden rule into our community. It takes an entire village to raise a child, and not only a parents. Time have changed. You can't go home and tell your neighbor children, oh, they were smoking dope. You got abused out. When the problem happened, oh Lord, why didn't you tell me? There's faith, and you know, away from all this faith, we need to separate our politician and our politics with this whole mental health issue business right now.
Because you know, it can be
major issue.
Yes, it's sad that an issue like suicide can be used at times for political gains, but that's another topic as well. But we have to wrap up, and so I'd like. Okay, so we're gonna bring in another journalist in a few minutes, Tangerine Clark, and they have an event that's ongoing right now in Brooklyn. And, you know, we're praying for the people of the Bahamas who are suffering as a result of that hurricane. So many lives have been lost. It's devastating. It's hurtful. And I'm aware, too, that a number of Guyanese, over 40 Guyanese, are going to be heading home tomorrow. And that's something that's facilitated by the government, which is a wonderful thing. So they get to go home, and you know, they're gonna get some help, but there's still so many persons suffering. We just deviated a little bit from the topic. This is basically another humanitarian crisis that the people of Bahamas that they're facing. And as I said, journalist Tangerine Clark, she is going to come in to just give us an update about what's happening in Brooklyn, what they're doing. They are pooling their resources together and funds to send and to help the people of the Bahamas. And so I'm urging all of you to keep the people of the Bahamas in your prayers. But we're going to bring her in a few, but I know that you guys have a lot more to talk about, to add. But some closing remarks, and we can start with Mr. Sogrim.
In my closing remark, I want to say everybody is special, you're precious. Suicide is not the answer. Talk to someone you love. There are people on the outside who will engulf you with their love and their heart, their kindness and their compassion. To all the younger folks and the older folks, I'm opening my telephone line 24/7, 973-868-6163. Call me 24/7. If you want to talk, I am available. And I want to say, let's be our brothers and our sisters keepers. Suicide is not the answer.
And I must acknowledge that, and the work too that you've been doing in Guyana, Mr. Sogrim. You leave the comfort of your home and everything that you have in the U.S. to go to Guyana to help not just persons who are dealing with suicide and the families and all of that, but so many different issues. And so our hats off to you. And I just want to ask something, because this is more on a personal side for you. How were you able to overcome your battle with suicide? How were you able to do it? What gave you the strength?
You know, there is a lot of factors, and we don't have all the time to talk about it. And again, as I said, being married, being divorced, being a single parent, they're challenging times. Their issues and thoughts will come to all of us. But what helps me as an individual is my spirituality and the little of my educational background that helps me to survive. And I strongly believe that life is precious. No matter how bad it is, life is precious. Taking your life is not the answer. And again, I'm opening up myself to anybody who wants to talk. I will find the help. I have Dr. Harry's number now. I have her dad's number now. Please don't hide from me. I'll be looking for you.
Dr. Harry, your closing remarks and general observation of suicide in Guyana.
Okay, so I'll start with the general observation that for some reason we're still very surprised when it happens, but we have all the risk factors, we have all the triggers and all the warning signs surrounding us every day. But, you know, and with the way things are going, sometimes people will sit and they will tell you it is easier to do that than to face the everyday struggles of life. And I mean, you know, sometimes it's a little bit difficult to try and convince a person to see the beauty within all of this pain and all of the struggles. But it can be there once we look for it. And I would urge everybody out there, please stop attaching stigma to mental health. Change starts with one person. We cannot, as the people, we cannot change it if we don't change it. It starts with us. It starts there. And it's something that happens every day. It can happen at any age group. That's just something I want to remind people of. It can start from any age group. We need to focus on that, not take things for granted, not take any signs for granted and think, you know, that, hey, it will never hit me or a loved one or somebody that I know. Yeah. Let's not take it for granted. And I will tie that in with a closing remark. And I said this at the beginning. We are humans first and we are labels after. So when we're dealing with persons, let's not deal with a label. Let's remember that we're dealing with a human being first. So put aside our own views, our own opinions, our own thoughts, our own judgments, and deal with that person. And it could be one more life that we save on a day. So I would urge people to do that. And please do not be afraid to reach out and ask for help or get help. If you are afraid of normal people judging you, you have the professionals there at every level, and we are there to help you in your struggle all along the way.
One more word very quickly I would like to share with you, Tracy. Love is a very powerful word. And I ask each and every one of us to start loving and accepting the people next to us.
Indeed. And I just want to stress as well that we all have a role to play, because you might see someone who is down and depressed and hurting, and one kind word can make a difference and can change and save a life. So let's not just look at the politicians or just the religious leaders for them, and it's just their job to deal with this. So let's all try to play our part in dealing with the issue of suicide. And Mr. Sobram said that love is a powerful word. It is the most powerful thing, and it can change lives. And for persons who may be suicidal, or if you know someone who is suicidal and they need help, the suicide prevention hotline, let me just give you the numbers again. Dr. Harry would have given you the numbers earlier, but it's 223-0001, and that's in Guyana. And it's also 223-0009, and there is a Digicel and a GT&T number that you can call, or you can text these numbers and they will call you back to give you the counseling that you need, or if you just need someone to talk to. And then that's where confidentiality comes in as well, because they don't know who they're talking to, so you can speak freely about whatever it is that you are going through to them, and they would be able to advise you and help you. And the cell numbers that you can call are 6007896 or 623-4444, and these are the numbers that you can call in Guyana if you are struggling with whatever issues, you're having suicidal thoughts. These are the numbers that you can call. We're going to bring in Tangerine Clark in a few. She is in Brooklyn, and they are raising resources right now for the people of the Bahamas who are still affected by that horrible hurricane, and we have people in the Bahamas from not just Guyana but so many other countries in the Caribbean who are living there, who are suffering. So many persons would have lost their lives as well, and I urge everyone that is listening, if you're looking, let's all come together and see how we can show support and love to them. Anything else that you guys would like to add as we await Miss Clark? She's going to be coming in.
I would like to say to Dr. Harry, being that she is on the professional helm, that we do have space in Port Morongo up in Quarantine Bay, which is a very private facility. If you can talk to your peers up in Georgetown and utilize space free of cost, there is no hidden agenda as far as money. It's a very beautiful building of North American standard of private rooms and whatever the case may be. We are opening up our service to you guys.
Thank you. The more help we can get, the better.
Yeah, but we need to move things along, yeah, because this has been on the table for quite a long time.
Indeed, and Mr. Sugrim, I know you've held many walks against suicide and other social ills and all of that. But can you tell me what were some of the success cases? Because I know you've helped a lot of people out of suicide. You've led them out of that path. Tell me a little bit about that.
There are many successful stories. Children who wanted to commit suicide. The principal would call me from time to time when I'm in Guyana. There were many cut in all of their hands and legs, as doctor had mentioned. Had to get family involved. Family wasn't aware what was happening with these children. I started to negotiate with the parents and trying to understand. So the child and the parents started to have a relationship. And I said to parents, they were distance apart. I said, get up and hug your mommy. This is your mother. And I always said to the mother, listen to your child. You are the best friend. There's no other better friends than you can be for your daughter. And I said to the child, there's no better friend you can be to your mother. So there is a lot of successful stories, yeah? I know I was taking one girl with a teacher to the New Amsterdam at Tangi. When she saw the institution, she jumped out of the bus. She said, oh, no, you're taking me to the madhouse, bam, and she was gone. It's the stigma. And we can't get away from that. These are teenagers, okay? But to date, we do not have a private location. Like in America and other places, we have private location where certain children and adults will go to these centers and nobody knows what goes on. And that's what we need to implement in Barbados and other areas, okay? And I hope we can talk about domestic violence at another stuff right now, because that's another burning issue. Why men are chopping up and killing these damn women, I don't understand, you know. So that's another whole story we can talk about it at another time. But concerning to the suicide, Dr. Harry, I will be home in Guyana, and I will probably talk to my other peers and see how we can lobby with the government. Which government is government, I don't care less. But we need help.
All right, great.
You're here.
We need help. And again, as I said, I'm very verbal on the issue.
Yes, you are. You are.
I don't need no political friendship. I love all of them with my heart. This is what it is.
All right. So, unfortunately, we were not able to connect with Tangerine Clark. But again, keep the people of the Bahamas in your prayers. And I'd like to thank you two so very, very much for coming on the program and sharing so much with us. Dr. Harry, so much knowledge from me personally, so much that I've learned. We thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to share with us.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome.
I would like to say to Dr. Harry that we should try to find some funding, and I don't mind sponsoring it on behalf of the organization to come out with professional ads, because I think she is one of the many professionals there, right to the grassroots level, as she says it. You couldn't get it any better than that.
Yes, Dr. Harry, you're amazing. Thank you. And Mr. Sugrim, again, thank you. And keep up the good work that you're doing for the people of Guyana. We appreciate you. To our audience, everyone who tuned in, the persons who would have shared their comments and everything, we're so thankful for having you every week on the program, and continue to show your support to Globespan. And just to mention, we did do an entire series on the issue of domestic violence as well, and we're going to continue to talk about many social issues that are affecting Guyanese, not just in Guyana, but around the world, and affecting those around the world. So again, thank you all so much, and I'm Tracy Can. Do have an enjoyable rest of the weekend.
Thank you so much, Dr. Harry. It was my pleasure.
So grim.
I want to say thanks to Mr. Nohar Singh and Devin and Tracy for bringing this Mr. Nohar Singh has been doing an excellent job.
Indeed,
Thank
he has.
Thank you, Mr. Nohar and Devin. Stay
All
blessed.
right.
Guys.
Have a great
Thank you,
weekend,
guys.
guys.
Take care. Bye-bye.
All right, then. Bye.